Hi everyone, my name is Jonas Cornet and I'm CEO and founder of Greenbyte. Excited to be here and to talk about digitalization in the context of renewable energy. And just to start with, a short agenda, I'll be introducing Greenbyte and then talk about boardrooms and value creations. And then our take on where we think the industry is going from a digitalization perspective. And finally, I'll end with a projection of where electricity prices are moving, or actually where I think electricity prices are moving. So let's get started. Greenbyte was founded in 2010. Our mission is to be the data hub for renewables. We are 85 people in Sweden, Spain, UK, and US. We are funded by our customers and also by an investor called Chorus. Our customers have 35 gigawatts of renewables installed with us. In terms of market share, we are very strong on wind in Europe, where about 10% of all wind power in Europe is installed in Greenbyte platform. Our main product is called Greenbyte Platform. On top of Greenbyte Platform, we also offer a marketplace in which third parties can get access to our customers' data if they provide it, so that third parties can build add-on services and provide them to our customers. We also host a Greenbyte Forum, which is an event for customers, an annual event where the topic is renewables and digitalization. The customers that we serve are owners of renewables, more than 500 megawatts, and for the most part, we have very satisfied customers and users. So if we get into the boardroom and talk about what is the purpose of the board of directors, well, in a classical sense, it is to generate shareholder value, and that's the purpose that I will stick with today. So let's look into a wind farm. And in a wind farm, it's possible to generate value in a few different. We find that most boards spend time talking about revenue, OPEX, and CAPEX. But below all of this, there is interesting ways to influence these levers that we call them here. And all of these ways require data from different sources, and ideally data that is combined from these different sources and provided in ways that they can be acted upon, analyzed upon, and decisions can be made. So if we start by looking at revenue, it's possible to increase revenue in a few different ways. First of all, of course, it's possible to increase the annual energy production by improving availability and performance. It's also possible to increase the revenue per megawatt hour, especially in now that a lot of companies have started to become more creative in how to sell electricity. One easy way is to provide visibility to power off-takers, and in this sense, it is possible to sometimes improve the amount of money that can be paid per megawatt. It's also becoming increasingly possible to sell ancillary services, which I'll get back to later in the presentation. From an OPEX perspective, a big trend we are seeing is that a lot of our customers are thinking about how to reduce the scope for service and basically selecting what parts of the risk should be internalized and what should be externalized. And this is a great area in which data can be used to, for example, isolate gearbox failures and take them off the service scope of service, or to actually only keep the gearbox. It totally depends on failure rates and sometimes also the size of the portfolio that a portfolio owner may have. So decreasing cost or scope, and of course reducing dependency on sub-supplier depending on the operational strategy. And it might also be good to have some data to challenge sub-suppliers in, are they actually delivering what they've set out to deliver. We've also seen cases where it's possible to have a better workflow so that a smaller team can manage a larger portfolio, utilizing digital tools and data analytics. On the CapEx side, there has been, from what we've seen, quite little gains to be had, but we do think that it's possible to have better terms with debt suppliers, given that it's possible to prove the business case certainty on large amounts of data. That's still to be proven. We haven't seen that totally play out. But given the amount of capex in a lot of wind farms, this might be possible. The final thing on this slide is the asset lifetime, where there are discussions about improving asset lifetime or extending asset lifetime, and doing that with a data-backed reasoning. And so far, we've seen that some assets do live longer than expected, but we've seen very little in terms of data analytics to prove that the asset lifetime might actually be longer than what has been assumed at the date of investment. But we do think it's a big opportunity in asset lifetime, and being able to manage a portfolio of assets to actually extend the asset lifetime. So we did a little poll at our last Greenbyte forum to ask if executive teams realize the financial impact of proper data management within operations. And I think the takeaway here is that it hasn't really gotten all the way to where one might expect, given all of the talk about data analytics that at least I see in the renewables industry. So I think there is starting to become some awareness that data analytics has the potential to impact operations and profitability in a positive way, but it hasn't really gotten into the boardroom or the executive teams to the extent that one might think. And that, I think, is even further enhanced in this question, that what impact does the evolving data management strategies have on the overall financial performance of your organization? And it's a little bit depressing, but not surprising, that they haven't had that big of an impact yet. But we can also see that they're becoming increasingly important, but still they haven't transformed the industry. So I guess what the takeaway is that there is still a long way to go. And bringing that into what we see as the kind of frontier of digitalization within renewables, it makes perfect sense. So we think about digitalization in renewables in three different frontiers: open, smart, and autonomous. And it's starting from the bottom, it's all about getting data. And getting data from different sources, from the asset itself, from production forecasting, from power prices, to maintenance reports, to substations, consolidating all of that data. And once you have that data, you need to trust the data, because sometimes the data that's provided by all of these different sources is not trustworthy. So there needs to be some mechanism to ensure that this data can be trusted. And once you can trust the data, to be able to visualize it and combine it in various ways. And once that can be done, you can actually run analytics on top of it. And then becoming smart to use more of a machine learning based approach in order to find insights that you can then take action upon. But insights, they're not really enough. At least what we find is that a lot of our customers, they want not the insight, but they want to know what to do. And once they know what to do through a recommendation, generally somebody needs to take an action. And sometimes that action is to actually control the asset, to curtail it or to shut it down. I think that in the future, having more of a optimizing based on a wind farm, not on a turbine level, and even optimizing on a portfolio are really interesting opportunities at the top of the pyramid. And ultimately being able to trade not only on selling energy, but also storing energy and selling other ancillary services. But I'll get into the ancillary services later. And so this is kind of where we see that the industry is going. We do think that the industry is not super mature. We think it's about at the layer of visualizing data. There are certain niche applications that go further up the pyramid, but when it comes to a comprehensive use of data, that the industry has quite a long way to go. And that's kind of reflective of the question that was asked here, is that they haven't really transformed their profitability. And from what we can see of where the industry is, that makes perfect sense. There's a long way to go. And so I thought that I would spend a little bit of time today to talk about these different frontiers. So let's get into open. And for us, what open means is that it's possible to share data across all of these different assets and other data sources, and to bring it together into one picture like this, a waterfall chart, which basically says that you have this budgeted energy, or the target energy that is expected to be produced. That's usually based on a pre-construction assessment of the wind. And sometimes that pre-construction estimate is not met. And that can be due to resource. And then you have, based on the resource that you have during a period of time, you have a potential energy that you can produce. But that potential energy is not always produced due to different reasons, like availability, performance, or curtailment. And that takes us to the actual energy that comes out of the grid meter and is put onto the grid. If we look into our portfolio, we can see that about 4 terawatt hours, or about $200 million worth of energy every year, is not produced due to these 3 reasons. And worldwide, that's about 120 terawatt hours, or $6 billion that's not produced due to these reasons. And while we do not expect that all of this energy can be unleashed by using data analytics, we are confident that by drilling down into availability and performance and being smarter with curtailment, that a lot of it can be actually unleashed and produced as renewable energy. And of course, that renewable energy will be beneficial both to the consumers, who will be consuming less hydrocarbons, and to the owners of these assets, who will be selling more energy. All right, so that's kind of one perspective of open. Another perspective of open is being able to share data across different actors in the value chain. So here we have an example of a wind farm that is installed in Greenbyte platform that is located in Indonesia. This wind farm, it sends data into Greenbyte, and the data that we get from the asset is forwarded to a production forecasting company through the Greenbyte API. In that API call, we also include the scheduled maintenance of the wind farm, so that the production forecaster knows when the turbines will be shut down or curtailed. The production forecast company then produces a forecast that goes into Greenbyte. The TSO collects the production forecast from Greenbyte and sends, if needed, a curtailment instruction to a control room that in this case is located in Hong Kong. And the control room, of course, also gets real-time data through Greenbyte from the asset and can send commands to the wind farm, issuing those commands that the TSO has sent to the control room. So this is all enabled by exchanging data between different companies in the value chain. And this is just one example. There are many examples where the Greenbyte API or other APIs are being used to exchange data across different companies, and generally beneficial to all of these different companies in the value chain. Okay, so let's get into other possibilities with being open. So here we're looking at the Greenbyte marketplace, which is available at greenbyte.com/marketplace. And what we've come to realize is that our customer base, they have large amounts of requests that they want to be able to use the data for. And there are a bunch of smart people in the world who can solve these requests, but they don't have access to the data. So what we've done is we've created a marketplace where third parties can, with the consent of our customer, get access to this data and build applications that can be distributed to all of our customer base. And we've done this with a few cases already that are related to different types of data sources, like production forecasting, or in solar, actually filling of gaps due to where you can use satellite data instead of data from parameters. We've done it within performance analytics and also within compliance, because in some countries there are certain regulation that's only applicable to that country, and there are experts in those countries at building and understanding those regulations. So this is the Greenbyte marketplace, and feel free to check it out after the presentation. All right, so getting into smart. Here we're looking at advanced analytics and recommendations, and I'm just going to give a few examples. One of this is the Greenbyte Predict, which is a way to identify component failures before they happen. And what we do here is we create a model for each component inside of the turbine. And we look at how this component behaves in perfect operating conditions. And we then model perfect operating conditions and compare those perfect operating conditions to the actual conditions. And in the event that they deviate a certain amount, we know that it's highly likely that this component is not operating as it should. So we then issue an alert, and we then look at the pattern of the data that led up to this alert, and we look at the whole customer base that we have and look at what have other companies done in order to resolve this issue. And so we then provide a recommendation based on what other companies have been doing and provide a recommendation. This is a way of both combining a large data set from different customers, machine learning, and a recommendation system, which has been working really well. And so this is one area of being smart, which is related to component failures. We think that there are many possibilities to be smart with data, anomaly detection. We think that even power price forecasting might be possible in certain regions, providing and thereby being able to provide a revenue forecast, planning of the optimal interventions, benchmarking availability, comparing how one's asset performs compared to others, cost benchmarks for O&M, and possibly even looking at what is a winning operational strategy for a type of wind farm in a certain region or a certain wind regime. And just basically utilizing all of this data to be smarter. And we find that a lot of our customers, not all, are really willing to share data if they can get insight, recommendations, and become smarter and operate their business better themselves. So here we are really welcome for third parties to start to work with us and to be able to distribute their services on the Greenbyte marketplace. Okay, so taking it one step further into becoming autonomous. So basically where we see that this industry should go with the help of digital tools is to be able to kind of have a wind farm run on autopilot. So provide a system with a bunch of metadata, kind of the data around the asset itself, provide the system with all of the necessary data sources, and then to set the conditions that you wish to operate this asset with yourself. So is it a high risk strategy, a medium risk strategy, low risk, and to be able to then also tie these insights into the control system so that you're basically closing the loop between the insights generated through the data and the actual control system itself. And this is where we are confident that the industry is going, especially if we are combining wind and solar together with storage or even in virtual power plants. The decisions that need to be made, in many cases, need to be made so fast that it's likely that they will be made better by a software system. But getting to this first, for sure, the industry needs to be open with sharing data so that all of these data sets can be combined and then becoming smart and then ultimately tying it in with the control system and finally even the trading of the energy itself. So at the top of the pyramid, we see action. And here we have most of the actions being taken in the renewable energy plant are done within the context of long-term service agreements. They can be service agreements which are for many years, but with increased metadata and context around an asset, it's likely that these transactions, or actually these service interventions, can become a lot more transactional, which means that there could be a scenario in which a service industry, kind of a gig economy service industry, grows up around renewables, where a lot of the context around the site is actually kept in a software system, and you need certified personnel who can be certified on a Vestas turbine or a high voltage part of a wind turbine or a wind farm, and can be called in to do works. And maybe there only needs to be one person there from the turbine manufacturer or even from the owner or the asset manager, but that the bulk of the work can be sourced in a more transactional manner. And that would be enabled by having more context within a software system. Finally, being able to, of course, control the turbine and to do that in a highly automated way, and then to trade and not just run-of-the-mill sales of electricity, but also being able to arbitrage and to provide demand response and frequency regulation, we think are going to have to become common in order for renewable energy to really penetrate the market at a higher penetration rate than today. If we are to go to like 50% renewables, we need to be able to provide demand response, frequency regulation, and all of these things that the energy market is already doing today, just not with renewable energies. So this has to happen, and a way to make this happen, digitalization is going to for sure be an enabler. But not only that, this has to happen because with solar and wind cost decreasing so much, my view is that they are going to become so abundant that the price of electricity is going to go to zero. So owners of wind farms and solar plants and storage facilities are going to have to earn money in more sophisticated way than just selling electrons. So these ancillary services, they have to grow up and they have to become available. And of course, it's a matter between technology and regulation and the kind of the framework around how to sell those ancillary services has to grow in parallel. Before that, we're not going to be able to sell any ancillary services. But in some markets, it's starting to happen. I think that it's going to be quite different in different markets. But in order to play in those markets, having control of the data is going to be of the utmost importance. So with that, I'd like to thank everyone for taking the time to be here today. And I think it's time for questions in 15 minutes or so. But until then, thanks a lot. It's been a pleasure to be here, and bye.